Right, welcome back. And in our second segment, we'll be speaking about Egypt's pivotal role, diplomatic role, and definitely its role in the region, but also internally. So we're speaking about a very steadily policy that Egypt has been conducting by construction, building the country, and definitely maintaining a policy that emphasizes constant basis, values and principles. This is what we will be speaking about in our second segment. Let me here welcome our guest, Dr. Cherif Amir, Professor of International Relations. We thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And if we speak about, we've been speaking as you watched HASM 2020 and the significance and messages given by this maneuver. We're also speaking on the other side, on the diplomatic front, on Egypt's main policy in the region. And let me take here your reading to how Egypt pertained its role in the region, particularly in the past few years, or rather starting after the 2013.
Starting from 2013, we had a certain boycott from several countries, especially our friends in the EU. But President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was very aware of I won't say the conspiracy, but the maneuvers by some hostile forces, especially from Qatar and Turkey, against Egypt's new faith, which is the will of the people in 2013. So he started by personal visits to all the Western capitals by himself, trying to explain to every country the vision of Egypt. And this was striking for all these forces, because they thought that Egypt will be isolated, that we won't be able to defend our position, that Egypt's military will be always trying to fight terrorism in the inside and then won't be able to defend Egypt's interests in the outside if there is any outside danger, and diplomatically that we won't be able to do something about Egypt's image, which will hurt our investment, it will hurt our tourism, it will hurt
our economy at large.
And of course, also the image of the Egyptians as people who are trying to, young people who are trying to go abroad, that we will be like, unfortunately, like Syria or like Iraq, that will be in the blacklist, that we won't be able to go anywhere.
In few words, distort the image of Egypt.
Of course.
Of what really happened in Egypt.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi started debating about the common interest between our nation and the Western world, which is fighting terrorism. He was very precise. If we want to fight terrorism, we have to fight the financing forces of terrorism, the countries financing terrorism. And today, in 2020, all the Western forces, the Western powers, they know that who is the right partner and who is the wrong partner, who is playing the blackmail in the Mediterranean, and who is trying to pertain peace, security, and friendship with everyone and fighting terrorism. Now Egypt is very clear that the Mediterranean now is being invaded against all the international law by Turkey, by what we are seeing from the dictatorship there in Turkey. And by the way, I would like to say that the Turkish people are our friends. We know that they are under oppression. We know that the journalists, people working in your field are in prisons. Professors are put in prisons. Even army officers are being put in prisons. That's why he's getting his mercenaries, of course. And he doesn't have pilots. That's why today he's speaking about the drones, because he doesn't have pilots. He's scared of training the pilots, so they will turn against him. So he put them whether in their houses or in prisons. So he's trying to fight drones planes without any, and he's investing billions of dollars of that without any pilots. So he would fight with mercenaries on the ground and planes without pilots. So it's ruined there.
Unmanned planes.
Of course.
Yes, yes, indeed. If we get to put in parallel both the military capability or ability, and Egypt has maintained a policy of strengthening its military, and the capability of its military, because of, as you said respectively, this wise plans that were inside the president's mind, and how he viewed things ongoing, and the diplomatic one. You spoke here about his very courageous action of going himself to make the outside world look into what really happened, or to correct the distorted image given to them by wrong. Part of the diplomacy that Egypt maintained was a diplomacy of integrity, and hence we started returning to Africa with all our hearts as our national security, or the depth of our national security, but also because we share the same future and the same destiny. How was that very much illustrated?
Well, let's not forget that at 2013 we were, for the first time in our history, put outside the African Union. And miraculously, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi made 2 strategic visits to Algeria and to the Niger. And we don't know why, because he has his own plans and he knows these are the secrets of the state. And we got our seat back, and a few years later we were heading the African Union. Of course, as you said, this is our background, which is Africa. And we have seen all what was done by our enemies fighting Egypt diplomatically and on the Nile, and financing some projects and trying to pursue some forces and some friends to be against Egypt. Let me tell you something. Even in the Horn of Africa, Turkey has planted a military base there in Somalia. Why they're doing that? Why they're trying to be present militarily in these poor areas? These are devastating countries. I could understand if they have something like military, like hospitals or schools, but military fields or military camps there, this is for to harm Egypt's interest in the Red Sea, and to be a neighboring force to Ethiopia. So I think that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi worked very hard in trying to tell the African nations, you are our brothers, we have common future. Yesterday, we gave a new project to our friends, and I repeat, our friends and brothers in Ethiopia, because we want peace and peaceful relationship. We told them we could work together on the power plants if you would like to. And I repeat, once again, we don't have any problems with the people. Egypt's diplomacy is, look in Egypt here, we have a huge community of Ethiopians.
For God's sake, we share the same destiny, the same Nile. I mean, here we have the same blood. And our children will live together. We are living in one continent that have to be sharing all the resources that we have through our cooperation rather than
the Ethiopian
our
community
conflicts.
in Egypt is living peacefully, so we have no problem with the people. But the problem is with some leaders who think that they could gamble with the future of their peoples. That's the difference between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and someone like Ankara.
No names.
Yeah, and Erdogan, unfortunately, he stepped over all the red lines. I think that Egypt now is very clear that we want peace, but our military forces have the capability. By the way, I want to make about Egypt's military buildup that we got since 2013. In the Western world, they don't even approach any country who is dangerous or rogue country and offer military cooperation unless they know that this country and this leadership is a strong rock and has wise military strategies. That's why they accepted delivering the Rafale to Egypt. They accepted the Mistral for Egypt. Russia is giving us all the Sukhoi and the helicopters also, because they know that Egypt military doctrine is about stability and peace. And they know now, look, for example, a few days ago when Turkey and France had this clash in the Mediterranean, the French had to go back to their shores and leave the Mediterranean, and then when they made this complaint to NATO, NATO didn't do anything, so France decided to boycott any naval exercise in the Mediterranean because of Turkey. Well, Turkey couldn't do that with Egypt now because they know that we will be very stubborn.
No, we will not. We will not go to any NATO or anything.
Exactly.
We will conduct our own.
They know Egypt is sovereign, that Egypt is powerful, and we will act according to the international law. As President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said, the international law is on our side. I'm a specialist in that, and I'm telling you, when he spoke about the red line in Libya, we have all the international law stating that if we sense the danger to our national security, we could make, I don't want to say preemptive strike, but we could make the right movement that could stop the danger to us. Let's not forget.
We could maintain our security very well, our national security very well.
And I'm very disappointed because of the international community's reaction of the invasion of Libya, that no one is acting. This is a sovereign country, like northern Iraq is being bombarded by Turkey, northern Syria.
Because Iraq is stable?
Well, I think that...
Because Syria is stable? Because Yemen is stable?
And Libya.
And now Libya?
Yeah.
Right, turning back to our topic. Turning back to our topic, and one of the issues also, or one of the policies that Egypt has always maintained is to the kind of coordination and cooperation between the international bodies. And hence Egypt was always keen to create a kind of cooperation between the African Union and the United Nations, particularly at a time when Egypt attained its seat as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, and while being the chair of the African Union. How far did you see that, and what kind of steps did Egypt do in order to maintain such cooperation?
Let's take the case of Libya, for example.
Yes.
We have managed during all these years to stop the escalation. We have managed to make the international community, by Egypt's diplomacy and Mr. Sameh Shoukry's efforts also, and the guidance of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, that Marshal Khalifa Haftar is the representative of the National Libyan Army. We worked with our friends in Paris, in Berlin, and London, and Washington, and Moscow about this topic. And let me tell you by personal experience from I know, it was a very, very hard task because this man was not accepted. We have done many work about that, and we told our friends in Europe, this is the right man for the right moment. He has to build the National Army of Libya to combat terrorism. We stopped the escalations, and believe me, if Egypt wouldn't have worked on diplomacy all these years, things would have been worse in Libya than we are seeing today. We have managed to keep stability and peace, but unfortunately, I'm saying again, the international community didn't take the right steps when Libya was invaded in front of all the international media. Mercenaries transported from Turkey into the shores of Libya, killing the civilians there.
That's what they call interests.
Well, it won't last long.
This is why I'm asking you about interests, because Egypt has always affirmed its support for the United Nations, all the world's or the international community's efforts in order to maintain international security, promote for sustainable peace, and all that. And Egypt's foreign policy has always been a stabilizing factor or regional stabilizing factor. This is why, when I speak about interests, why Egypt should be looked at as a main source for understanding how their interests can be maintained, but at the same time with regional stability.
Well, unfortunately, in the Middle East, the respect is always for the strong. And that's why Egypt was very keen to work since 2013 to build up the military again and to be very strong about it, because the interests of this part of the world is about gas fields, oil fields, and if we will not be able to protect it, it will be gone in a matter of days. We have seen countries losing everything, like what happened in Kuwait, for example, in 1990 with the invasion of Iraq. If you don't have a strong economy, a strong army, and you have all these riches, it will be stolen in front of the international community and no one will help
Rather,
you.
I have seen the chaotic scene that took place in Iraq, and never did Iraq was able to come back again.
Exactly.
In just 1 minute, because this is all what is left for me, what is a message that should be said clearly today?
To the international community?
Yes.
Or, well, we are a peace-loving country. We have diplomacy open to all negotiations till the last moment. Camp David was the proof of Egypt's willingness to work for peace. I think that in the same time, if the drums of wars are being played by any other country, well, we are very well prepared. The international law is on our side.
Yes. Yes, unfortunately my time is out, but I leave it with this message. Dr. Cherif Amir, Professor of International Relations, we thank you so much for being with us tonight. Many thanks for watching. Tomorrow would be another important debate with another colleague. Until then, good night.